Good morning, and
We have some information yet on Chairman. We'll just wait for the live stream.
yeah, sorry, volume's better, but it's a bit crackly now.
Hello.
Chairman, I've had confirmation that the live stream has started.
Thank you. Well, good morning, and welcome to this virtual meeting of the West Area Subcommittee. Before consideration of today's business, I'll outline the protocols for the meeting. Today's meeting is being live streamed to the public via Microsoft Teams and is also being recorded. When members are speaking, they may choose to use their video. If the council live stream fails during the meeting and we cannot share the proceedings, I'll adjourn the meeting so that access can be restored. If the issue cannot be resolved, I will halt the meeting and the remaining business will be concluded at a future date. If a member experiences a technical issue, I'll adjourn for a short period to try and re-establish their connection. As I call members to speak, I'll remind you to switch on your microphone. If for some reason you cannot be heard, the Democratic officer will advise you. The vote will be taken by roll call of committee members by the Democratic officer. Members must be present for the duration of the discussion on each planning application in order to be able to vote. We have public speakers at the meeting today and they will be joining the meeting by telephone. Where a member has declared a non-registrable interest, a disclosable pecuniary interest, or interest by virtue of any trade union membership in a matter that they must leave the virtual meeting, their departure will be confirmed and they will be invited to rejoin the meeting at the appropriate time. To confirm the procedure for today's meeting is that members of the committee who wish to speak on an item should indicate by using the raise your hand function, which is being monitored by the Vice Chairman. Any member not on the committee or unable to use the raise your hand function who wish to ask a question should indicate by typing X in the chat box. Before the start of the business, I'll ask the Democratic Services Officer to ask the committee members to confirm they are present and state their electoral division. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. It's Angela Saunders here, Democratic Services. I'll start with yourself.
Yeah, it's Roger Harding and it's the Newly Mousel division.
Thank you. Councillor Bastin.
Good morning, John Bastin, Councillor for Constantine, Mornan and Budok.
Councillor Biggs.
Yes, good morning, Councillor Dave Biggs, member for Camborne Treswithian.
Councillor Code. Councillor Code, you're on mute at the moment.
Yeah, I do that every time. Yes, Graham Code, member for Hale South.
Thank you. Councillor Duffin.
Joyce Duffin, Cornwall Councillor for Mount Hawke Portreath.
Councillor Eakin-Smith.
Good morning, David Eakin-Smith, Cornwall Councillor for Illugan.
Councillor Wallace.
I'm here. I'm Andrew Wallace. I'm the Cornwall Councillor for Porthleven, Houston West.
Councillor Hurd.
Good morning, John Hurd, Councillor for Camborne Pendorvis.
Councillor Rule.
Good morning, Angela. Carolyn Rule. I'm Councillor for Mullion and Great Ruin.
Councillor Martin.
Good morning, Councillor John Martin for Helston South.
Councillor Nicholas.
Good morning, Councillor Sue Nicholas for Marazine and Perranasnoe Division.
Thank you. Councillor Pascoe.
Councillor Lionel Pascoe for Gwynedd, Gwydion and St Earth.
Councillor Robinson.
Richard Robinson, Cornwall Councillor, St Ives East.
Councillor John Thomas.
Good morning, Cornwall Councillor John Thomas representing Lanner and Scythian's electoral division.
And Councillor Mike Thomas.
Good morning, Angela. Councillor Mike Thomas representing Helston North.
Thank you. I'll also confirm the officers that we have present. We have Mark Broomhead and Peter Gregory from Planning. Ben Kernow from Legal, myself, Angela Saunders, I'm the committee's clerk, and Rowena Brebner, who is live streaming the meeting today. Thank you, Chairman.
Right, thank you, Angela. Right, item 1 on the agenda are apologies. Are there any apologies for absence, please?
Yes, I've had apologies from Councillor Kaczmarek, who's being substituted by Councillor Rule today.
Right. Are there any further apologies? If not, I'll go on to agenda item 2, which that's declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? No, apparently not. So we go on to agenda item 3, that's minutes of the previous meeting. They're on pages 1 to 9. So if we just check them for accuracy, I'll go through them page by page. It's page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5, page 6, page 7, page 8, and page 9. So if everybody's happy, yeah.
Move that, Chairman.
Yeah, so is that both Councillor Thomas's? Okay.
Yeah, Councillor Thomas, whichever first.
That's it. So if members could vote by showing the virtual hand, all those that agree that there's a true and correct record of the meeting, please show. Right.
Yeah, that looks like that's carried, Chairman. If everybody could put their hands down again. Thank you.
Right, thank you. So with that, we go on to agenda item 4. That's the applications for consideration. And the only one in today's business is item 4.1, which that's PA 20/05268, Mr. M. Wallace, Treasure Farm, Porthleven, Helston. And I think Peter, are you there, Peter? Peter Gregory?
Yes, Chairman, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Are you going to share your screen with us?
Yeah, I'll do that.
Yeah, if you just test that for a moment, please.
Does that works, Chairman?
Yeah, that's working fine now, Peter. So over to you when you're ready.
Excellent. Thank you. This application is for the erection or proposed development of 2 bungalows and construction of a secondary means of access at Treasure Farm, Porthleven, Helston. The main considerations in this application are the principle of development, landscape impact, and flood risk. Here you can see the application site. It's on the north of Porthleven. You can see the outskirts of Porthleven here, Toll Ponds Road. The red line area indicates the site. This is Treasure Farm here. And obviously the red line here shows the secondary means of access, but we'll come on to that in a minute. The primary means of access here from the main road to the west. So moving on. So I'm having a little bit of trouble. Can you see the slides? Are they moving on?
No, we've previously on the original, the one with the where you got proposal with the arrow. Yeah.
Okay, sorry, is that better? Sorry about that, Chairman. Yeah. Here you can see is the site plan. You can see the proposed site here, immediately to the east of the buildings here at Treasure Farm. The main house here to the south, and the main means of access here from the road. And turning to the aerial plan, here you have the paddock, an area of paddock where the 2 dwellings are proposed. And again, you can see the collection of buildings here, the northern outskirts of Porthleven here to the south, with Toll Ponds Road running there to the north. This is the existing site plan. The site application site is in here. It's bordered by trees and hedging, and you can see that in there, and the existing buildings. So turning to the proposed site plan, the proposed 2 bungalows here sitting in this site, means of access here from the lane to the south, and again you can see the existing collection of farm buildings there. Turning to the proposed plans, single-storey development, trying to mirror really or replicate the design of the buildings at the farm, natural stone, slate roofs, hardwood windows and doors, kept with hip roofs, low profile. So that's the basic design, as you can see, for the 2 plots there. And turning to the site photos, this is the main entrance from the road out of Porthleven. You can see the gated entrance here, and the site sits here. You can just see the buildings, existing buildings in the background there, but that is the main driveway up to the application site from the main road. And again, this is the view from the highway to the west. As you can see, the site is screened to some degree during certain times of the year by the tree screen here, but obviously during the winter months that will thin out, and you can just see the buildings in the background here, and the development will sit forward of those buildings there. And this is a view from within the site. You can see the existing building on the right here. Application site sits in this area of paddock grassed area here, and that's the existing driveway you can see in front of you there. And this is the view of the site from the access lane again. The new site access to serve the dwellings will punch through here, and that's the existing driveway. You can see the undeveloped nature of the site quite clearly from that photo. And this is looking across the site to the west. So this is the area of land that will house the proposed development. As you can see, it is very rural in character here, and obviously members can see the undeveloped nature of the site. And again, that's another view looking west. Now turning to Toll Ponds Road to the south, this is where the secondary means of access is proposed, which is proposed for emergency access only, and for farm access and for pedestrians. That's because the main access point on the road to the west of the site is within the high risk flood zone. So this is a secondary means of access, essentially a secondary means of escape, which the EA Environment Agency have supported. So it is a secondary means of access for emergency only and farm vehicles to the site. And again, you can see the proposed entrance there. And this is just an additional slide. You can see the site here to the north, and this is the secondary means of access running down to Toll Ponds Road. I'd just like to point out the arrow here. This was the site of a refusal. You can see the reference there for a proposed holiday cottage. That was dismissed on appeal, refused and dismissed on appeal, as that site was deemed to be located in the countryside outside the defined boundary of Porthleven. So as you can see, the site we're dealing with here is considerably further out beyond the settlement than this site where the appeal was dismissed. And in summing up, the development proposes the erection of 2 bungalows in a rural location outside the defined limits of the established settlement. The proposal is deemed to be acceptable from an access and amenities perspective, and the secondary means of access is acceptable from a flood risk perspective. The latter can be secured and implemented into the proposal through the imposition of a suitable planning condition, which would also be necessary to address matters of biodiversity and archaeology. Notwithstanding this, the proposal is deemed to be contrary to the adopted development plan policy concerning the location of new housing development and causing material harm to the rural character of the area. Therefore, in exercising the planning balance, the application is recommended for refusal, as this is not a sustainable location for new housing development. Thank you, Chairman.
Right, thank you, Peter. Angela, have we still just got the 2 speakers? It's Mr. Wallace and Councillor Wallace, is that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Mr. Wallace, are you there?
I am indeed, Roger. Which one? There's 2 of us.
No, the applicant, Mr. Wallace.
Hello.
Oh, good morning, Mr. Wallace. Welcome to today's meeting. The time, you've got 3 minutes, and we'll remind you when it's 30 seconds to go. And once you start talking, the time will be taken from there. So over to you, Mr. Wallace.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity to allow me to speak to you briefly before you debate our planning application. As you'll have noted, the planning officer has provided you with a policy assessment for the proposal and concluded that the development can't be supported because it's outside a settlement boundary. I hope that you will however agree that he has been complimentary about the design and layout of the proposal. It has been carefully designed to reflect and integrate with a cluster of dwellings located at Teresa. I wanted the opportunity to give you some background as to why we have submitted this application in the context of our farm and the development would mean to us and our ongoing businesses. I am a second generation of my family at Teresa Farm. My father purchased Teresa in 1974 and we've been farming it ever since. He's still involved with the day-to-day running of our business here located at Penventon Farm and High Up and Rose Farm, which are both short-term tenancies with the National Trust. We operate a mixed arable and dairy farm, and I'm sure you appreciate farming, particularly dairying, is experiencing different times at present, and there's a number of dairy farms in our area diminishing year on year, and I hope to buck that trend. My family have retained ownership of all the dwellings at Treza, and we have a policy of letting the properties out to local families at what I consider below market rent. Over the years, this has been proven to be really good stepping stone for families to achieve their own house ownership after leaving Treza, and we get on really well with all the tenants, and I still get contact with them when they leave. Whilst I fully appreciate that the council can't treat this as a material planning consideration, the fact of the matter is that the 2 bungalows under consideration, if approved, will be dealt with in the same manner. We are not developers seeking to make a profit from this development. The retained income we receive is massively important to us to maintaining the viability of our core farm business. Your committee report suggests that the visual harm would result from the development due to its countryside setting. The site is incredibly well screened from metally bottoms by trees. The residential development at Treza is separated from the surrounding farmland by Cornish hedges. It is incredibly well enclosed, and the officer acknowledges himself that there are no design concerns. The land we propose to use has limited value and is existing residential properties. I maintain the area of grassland to keep it tidy. Clearly, it's not previously developed, but the application would make best use of this land. At a final point, the committee report suggested that the secondary access to Toll Pond Road would not be used because it's not street lit. I can't agree with this. A well-surfaced track would not only allow occupants to be proposed development to access to Buff Leather and amenities by foot or by cycle more safely, but it would provide the same benefit for all 5 existing dwellings that already exist on the site. Thank you once again for allowing me to speak, and I wish you all well.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Wallace. If you can just remain online, just in case any of the members have got a question for you. I'll open that up to members. Are there any questions for Mr. Wallace? Yeah. Have you got any members indicating, David?
I can't see any questions, Chairman.
I think it's Sue Nicholas. Yeah. Yeah. Sue, did you want to ask a question?
Yeah, please. It's really about this emergency access. We were shown on the slide, I'm trying to think of it now. Is that in existence already, which is the impression I got, or will you be making a new entrance access for this emergency access through an existing greenfield site?
We're making a new access, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Right. Were there any other questions, David? Yeah, Councillor
Mike Thomas.
Yeah.
Yes,
Mike Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Wallace, can you confirm how many people presently live in that area at the moment at Treza Farm?
How many? There is 6 dwellings, and the people living in there. I would say about, I would guess 18, but yeah.
That's living in that area in Treza Farm itself.
In Treza Farm, yes. There's 1 bungalow, 1 house, and then 4 barn conversions.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Councillor Thomas. Have you got any other speakers, David?
No, that's the lot, Chairman.
No. Right, that's it, Mr. Wallace. Thank you very much for attending today's meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, the next speaker, I think we go to Councillor Wallace. Are you there, Councillor Wallace? Andy?
I am indeed, Roger. Nice to see you.
We'll remind you when it's 5 minutes to go, and if you've still got 5 minutes, if you could start winding up at that stage. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Roger. I won't take 5 minutes. I think you've heard, I'd just like to start off that as we're not related, as in we might have the same surnames and we live in the same areas. We are not related, so just as a declaration of interest for clarity, we're not related. So I want to speak on behalf of the support of Mr. Wallace and his family. You've heard that he wants to diversify. Farming is a very difficult business. Martin has diversified quite well with his arable crops, which he sells is mostly to crisps, and also he's still one of the last dairy herders in the area, and anyone who knows anything about farming know that dairy farming is a tough business to get in. But what I want to go on this one is a slightly more technical. Peter was kind enough to show you the map of the application, and he made reference to the appeal, and I think it was PA 18371. I forget the first digit. It's an interesting one that Peter's put that, because actually Peter and the planning officers wanted to approve this, and it was only the town council who didn't want to approve this, and it come to committee, and where it went to appeal, and the appeal was upheld. But if you're looking at the principle of development, the planning authority wanted to approve this. Okay, and I would also like to draw an attention to another recently approved application, which is, if anyone knows the area, and forgive me if you don't, near Gypsy Lane, near Venton Bender, there was planning permission given for conversions of barns to holiday accommodation, and that is further away from the settlement of Porthleven. So what I'm looking for is consistency here, is that you've heard from Martin that he wants to protect his farm for generations. His father has owned it for the last 40 odd years, and I think where I'm coming from is that we're looking to support the farming industry in diversification. But looking at this in the planning terms, the local authority has already recognised this area as a hamlet. And I can even give you the planning number from PA for 2016, when it recognised Teresa Farm as a hamlet. And if you're looking at the local plan, it clearly states that windfall sites in hamlets and other small villages are allowed underneath the local plan. And so, for my point is that I believe there are grounds to approve this, both on helping to support a farmer and his family, but actually on planning grounds where there is actually in our own local plan guidance and for this type of development. As for the nature of it's not named in the settlement's not named in the local plan, and I know Peter and I have had a conversation about this. Porthleven is not named in the local plan, and therefore you wouldn't say this is a small area. So just asking for some consistency here on previous applications, what would have been approved had it been for the town council on this application, but also on this application. Previously the town council did refuse it at first and asked for certain conditions to be put in, which they were met from my understanding. The town council then approved this application. It only then went down to the agreed to the planning officer once there was a further communication with the local town council. So I was saying, I think all members here know when they know there's a local member and the planning officer doesn't agree with them, you get a series of 3 or 4 options, and it's almost a little bit a fait accompli on that one. So the town council did support this due to the process. So I think I've covered everything here. I believe we should support the farmer in his application. This is for local housing. This is not holiday lets, and I believe there is also planning policy what supports this application.
Thank you, Andrew. Were there any questions from members for Andrew? Have you got any members that indicated they wish to speak, David? Yeah,
Councillor Rule, Chair. Councillor Rule.
Yeah, Carolyn, are you there? You okay?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I have got a question, if I may, please.
Yeah.
Good morning, Andy. Nice to see you, darling. I understand you were saying that we need to be consistent, and that there's been another application nearby somewhere where barns were converted. Can you clarify for me? I think Mr. Wallace said that the barns have been converted on this farm, so therefore this is different. I think I don't come to many planning meetings, so pardon me if I'm asking daft questions, and I don't know whether it's Councillor Wallace to answer or the officers, but could you confirm that the barns have already been converted, and therefore there is consistency that we have supported this farmer in the past, or this Teresa Farm in the past, and that new dwellings are slightly different? Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Broomhead.
Yeah, I think we'll leave that when we go for questions of officers, Chairman.
Yeah. Okay then. But were there any other questions? Yeah, Councillor Mike Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Wallace. Can you say anything about the history of Teresa? There's mention of it going back in time, but can you say anything of its history over the last 100 years or so that would show that it has any settlement value?
Without giving anyone a history lesson, I too quite a keen local historian. This area is one of the oldest places of Porthleven. It's slightly after what is now known as Nethley Farm. It is an old settlement which you could almost trace back to definitely the Domesday Book, but also Romano-Britain over it, and it was one of the manor houses of old. So you could, so it's got a long history as a settlement. And for those who know, geography and history, is most farms were built on previous hamlets, post-settlements from Romano-British through the Middle Ages all the way up to the current times.
Thank you very much.
Have you any other speakers, David?
No, Chairman.
Yeah. Thank you, Andy. If you did want to ask any questions, you need to do it before we actually go into committee. We'll go to questions of officers, and then once we finish that section, you wouldn't be able to take part. So feel free if you've got any questions once we go into the officers bit of it. So I'll open up to members. Are there any questions of the officers? Yeah. Right.
Councillor Nicholas is the first one I've got, Chair.
Yeah. Thank you, David. Councillor Nicholas.
Thank you, Chair. The thing that I'm getting caught with is why is it necessary? And perhaps I know that the flood risk has been looked at and various things, but I'm just concerned about the track that goes across all the greenfield sites when there's an existing entrance. Is there any reason why the existing entrance can't be used by these two bungalows?
Mr. Broomhead?
Yeah, I think that's because of the flooding issues at that entrance. So therefore they have to have a secondary entrance for a means of escaping if there's any future flooding issues.
Because looking at it, those are all greenfield sites and there's only a track around the field, but there's no kind of like designated track across those fields that I can see. So I don't see that there would be a major problem, but I wouldn't necessarily agree with that track going through fields.
Okay.
All right, thank you. David, next speaker.
Councillor Baston, Chairman.
Yeah. Councillor Baston.
Oops.
Yeah, John.
Right. So, thank you, Chair. Two questions. Sorry, can I have the size of the site and the land grade for the site? I've had a look through the paperwork and I can't find it.
Mr. Broomhead?
Peter, have you got the size and the land grade?
I haven't. I can come back to you on that if that's okay.
I think,
yeah. If you go on to the next speaker, if you could look that up, Peter, we'll come back to you at the end. Next speaker you got, David?
Councillor Pascoe.
Yeah, Councillor Pascoe.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't see any report from the land agent. The last two meetings that we've had similar sort of farming practice, and we've had land agents report, but we haven't got one this time. What's that?
Yeah, Mr. Broomhead?
Yeah, I mean, there's no need to consult the land agent because the development isn't a development that we would support as a farm diversification project. It's put forward as two dwellings. I appreciate the applicant is supporting it, but there's clear policy objections in terms of policy 7. And it doesn't meet the criteria for new housing in the countryside.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right, David, have we got any other speakers?
Nothing else showing at the moment, Chairman.
Chairman, it's Angela, the Democratic Support Officer. I think Councillor Duffin had put an X in the chat box.
Right.
Oh, can't see that.
Councillor Duffin, did you want to come in?
Yeah, I did. Thank you, Angela. I've got a couple of queries. It's really just to get it right in my head. So if generally the principle of development, not this specific one, so if someone's converting a barn on a farm, that's okay. And if they were going to provide holiday accommodation, can they build a new building for holiday accommodation, or does it just have to be a conversion of something that's already there? And then my other question is to this point about hamlets. Does it make a difference if it's seen as a hamlet rather than just a farm? Thank you.
Mr. Broomhead?
Yeah, obviously barn conversions are completely different to new builds. On some occasions, we have looked at helping farmers out by looking at some form of farm diversification projects in terms of some form of holiday, perhaps as yurts or some camping, or it's mainly if there's a holiday complex there that we can support the expansion of that. And in terms of hamlet, Peter, if you go to the slide that was referred to at the beginning, if you can, please. At the back. I don't know if members can see that very clearly, but you can see all the dots on this of existing dwellings or existing units. Can you see those dots clearly there? Members see
They're
that?
numbered, are they?
Yeah, well, there's a load of what I'm getting at. There's a considerable amount of properties here. This was an appeal that was recent in Sennen, at a property called Mayon Farm, Sennen, and the proposal was for 2 dwellings in this area here, but the inspector made it quite clear that the buildings which comprise Mayon Farm would not constitute a settlement for planning purposes, but rather appear to represent a group of associated buildings which once supported the agricultural activities on farm holding, and which now represents an outline development. That was again a load of barn conversions, and that was considered not to be a settlement. I appreciate what Councillor Wallace has said, but I think that was not a good choice of words, because it says hamlet of barn conversions and not really a hamlet. And in that same report, the officer referred to a tidy cluster of properties. So in my view, this is more of a farmstead than a settlement or a hamlet, and there's clear policy objections to new housing.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, is that all your questions? Was it, Councillor? You had both of them answered, have you?
Yeah, thank you.
That's fine. Yeah. David, have you got anybody else before we go back?
Could I just ask for, I do, Chair, that people either put an X in the box or put their hands up. I thought we were putting our hands up, which is what I'm monitoring.
Yeah,
that's why I missed Joyce's question last time.
Yeah. Yeah, we are using the virtual hand. If a member wishes to speak, if you use the virtual hand, and then David can pick it up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So the next speaker is Councillor Dave Biggs.
Yeah. Over to you, Dave.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chairman. Again, this question of the hamlet. Would it be a question for our officers? Would it be true to say that in the normal course of events, you would expect the hamlet to have public right-of-way access to it? I'm not sure that this one does. And in that case, would it be more rightly classified as a private estate?
Yeah, Mr. Broomhead.
Yeah, I think that when you look at the history, there's I think there's 6 properties there. One is an agricultural bungalow that's tied. There's the original farmhouse, and all the rest are barn conversions. So therefore, it's quite clear in my view that this is not a hamlet; it's just a farmstead. And as I pointed out, a lot more properties are at this place in Sennen, and the inspector made it quite clear that was not a settlement. So I don't think it's a settlement of any form for planning purposes.
Okay. Thank you, Chairman.
David, next speaker is
Peter Gregory wants to come back.
Yeah. Okay, Peter. Have you got? That's the information for Councillor Baston, is it?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, it's in response to that question. It's the application site area is 0.48 hectares, and it's classified as Grade 2 agricultural land. So just confirming that. Thank you.
Right, David. Next speaker.
Councillor Mike Thomas.
Yeah. Okay, Mike, over to you.
Thank you, Chairs. Really to Mark, I think, about the issue of the floods risk issue. On pages 17 and 16, there's reference to a safe exit. was other consideration given other than a additional road pathway to Toll Ponds Road? And also within this question, what is the flood plan at the moment for the 18 people who live there? Is there a flood plan?
Peter, do you want to answer that point, please?
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. The secondary means of escape, because the main access route onto the highway, I can just share. You will see here this plan. This is the main road out of Porthleven onto the Penzance Road, and you can see the site here to the east. So this is the high risk flood zone, which is what the existing means of access does fall into. So with a further 2 properties on the site in accordance with up-to-date flood risk guidance, that wouldn't have been acceptable to increase that flood risk over and above the existing properties, which was why the secondary means of access was proposed to Toll Ponds Road in the low risk flood zone 1. So that was the only really option that the Environment Agency could support. But when we look at the existing properties on the site, the barn conversions were granted permission in 2005, and obviously you have the historic farmhouse and the agricultural workers dwelling was granted permission in the 70s. So that's historic development, and the flood risk advice would have been likely to have been different at that stage. But this is just, considering this in accordance with up-to-date guidance from the Environment Agency. So that's why that secondary means of access was needed if you're increasing the number of residential units on the site to mitigate that risk, basically.
So you're saying this is the only approved Environment Agency secondary access, where it says in the paragraph you might be an alternative safe refuge. This is the only, excuse me, the only one that they had approved.
That's correct, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Have you any other speakers, David?
I can see no more hands, Jim. No.
Right. So no other questions from any members of the committee. Right. Any members that are watching that are not members of the committee, any Cornwall councillors, if they wanted to ask any questions? I don't know, Andy, if you had any questions? No.
His internet has just crashed, but he did say to me that he didn't have any other questions.
Yeah. Councillor Martin, did your hand go up?
Yes, thank you. I'm wondering if Councillor Rule, she really needs her question answered that you asked earlier. Is that true, Councillor Rule?
Yeah, Chairman, I put in the chat box, could I have an answer to my question, but actually listening to Mr. Broomhead's response to other people, I've got it, thank you, that there are several barn conversions already on the farm. So that was what I was trying to find out. And he has clarified that when talking to somebody else. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. If I could just remind members that the way we're operating is that if anybody want to ask a question, we are using the virtual hand, and that's what David, as Vice Chairman, is looking at. So we go on now. Has any of the officers got any questions? No. Right. We'll go into the committee, and if anybody wants to speak on it, please show. Yeah. Councillor Nicholas.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm just getting a little bit confused here. If you look at this slide that we already have here about the flood risk, the point where that existing farm track joins the road out of Porthleven seems to be a lower risk than if you took a emergency track through to whatever was the name of that road, Toll Pond Road, and then joined the main road at the bottom end of that. So I'm getting a little bit confused as why you'd need a track that takes you back into a place that looks as if it would be more likely to be flooded than the actual entrance to the farm.
Yeah, I think the flooding issue really is a secondary issue. I think the key principle here is new housing in the countryside, and does the proposal meet any of the criteria set out in our policies or adopted plan? And it's clearly, in my view, contrary to that.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. David, we'll go to your list.
Councillor Duffin, Chairman.
Yeah. Over to you, Councillor Duffin.
Thank you. It's a really difficult application, isn't it? And obviously that's why it's come to committee. You can understand why people are trying to diversify and help their businesses. However, we are policy led at the council, and if the buildings have already been converted, the ones that can be, that I'm sure other members will also have areas outside of settlements with farms that they'd very much like to build new houses in the countryside as well. And I think, for me, the problem is we've got policies for a reason. Once you start going against them, you then open yourself up for everybody else across Cornwall to be doing the same thing. And if you think about the amount of farms that we have just outside settlements, if they all wanted to build new houses, we'd be in a really sticky position. We are trying to protect our countryside and have building in our more urban areas or within settlements for a reason. And so putting all that together, I would like to propose that we refuse this as laid out in the report.
Is there a seconder for that?
Yeah, I would second that, Chairman.
Yeah.
Vice Chairman.
Right, thank you. And next speaker is David.
Is Councillor Bastin.
Yeah. Over to you, John.
Right, thank you, Chair. I have a great concern that for future need, and maybe even quite soon future need, we've got to protect our Grade 2 land. I know you may argue that it's not a particularly big area, but Grade 2 land is quite rare, and we do need to protect that. So I'm afraid I can't support this application in as much as, we cannot afford to lose any good quality land.
Thank you. Yeah, next speaker, David.
Councillor Robinson, Chair.
Yeah, over to you, Richard.
Yeah, many thanks, Chairman. I have to say, the only thing I didn't agree with in terms of what Councillor Duffin said is the difficulty of this. I don't think it's difficult at all. To me, it's clear. The reasons for refusal have all been spelled out already by the officers, and I see really little other alternative but to refuse it. So you know how I'm going to be voting.
Well, thank you. Right, next speaker, David.
I don't have any other hands at the moment, Chair.
We don't. No. So if everybody's happy, then no further speakers. We'll put it to the vote. So the recommendation, it was proposed by Councillor Duffin and seconded by
me.
And yeah, oh yeah, sorry, yeah, by the Vice Chairman. Sorry about that, David. And so it would be, as printed in the agenda, the recommendation would be for refusal. So we're going to do it by roll call. So over to you, Angela.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Bastin.
For.
Councillor Biggs.
For.
Councillor Code. Councillor Code.
Against.
Against. Councillor Duffin.
For.
Councillor Eakin-Smith.
For.
Councillor Harding.
For.
Councillor Hurd.
For.
Councillor Rule.
For.
Councillor Martin.
Against.
Councillor Nicholas.
For.
Councillor Pascoe.
For.
Councillor Robinson.
For.
Councillor John Thomas.
For.
Councillor Mike Thomas.
Against.
Okay, if you just bear with me, I'll count that up. I can confirm that the application is being refused by 11 votes in favour and 3 against.
Right, thank you very much. So we've now gone to item 5. That's any other business that the chairman considers to be of urgency. There is none. So I think there's no list of notice of appeals or anything, so that's the end of today's meeting. So I'd just like to thank everybody for their attendance and well, wish you a you've got an early sort of end today, so I hope you enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. And,
Chairman, I'll just wait for confirmation that the live stream has ceased. So if you just wait for a moment before I get that confirmation, please.